In this video, I'm going to show you how I build quick, easy and cheap borders in my lawn. And these borders are specifically for more flowers and perennials so that I don't just have some sort of box, garden with just lawn and a few flowers around the edges. I wanted a really curvy, magical, intriguing garden with sort of pathways around the borders, and you can't sort of tell just from looking at it what's there. You actually have to walk around and enjoy it as you go. So this is my second to last border. This one is for a sweet pea hedge, which is going to hopefully cloak this fence behind, and it will be a beautiful backdrop for all the other borders, which I'm going to fill with all my flowers and perennials. So here's where I'm going to put my new border, and it's kind of the last border in the sun, sort of towards my path, which weaves towards my house. And I'm going to make it quite circular, but because the edges are going to be softened with all the plants that I grow in there, it doesn't really matter if it's not perfect. It just has to look curvy and organic and fit in with the general theme of my curvy path garden. It's a typical cottage garden, really. And you can see my path curving around the fire pit, and it goes into the back where I've got my shaded seating area. Then I've got my tulip border there, and then I've got other borders around, and then I'm going to have this border here and the sweet pea hedge at the back, covering that sort of pretty hideous looking fence, to be honest, that was already here when I moved in. So I began by digging this trench, and I'm going to put these wooden rolls in. I took 3 to do this trench, which I think was about this circle, which I think was about 2 meters in diameter. I'm not quite sure, to be honest. You can see my other borders there. Look, I've got my ranunculus in that one, I've got my peonies in that one, and then I'm going to do little plinths, so there will be pathways all winding through, maybe gravel, some grass, winding through all these areas, and a little plinth for my tree peony and other plants. And even though I have all these contraptions protecting my borders from the dogs digging them up, they still find a way in. So I need a contraption to protect my contraption from the dogs. And I have just found 2 ranunculus in my new bed dug up by one of my naughty little puppies. But anyway, you can see the edge of the border there. I can't wait to be able to rid the garden of all this junk that I'm protecting it from these hounds of mine. So once they're established, I know they'll be fine, but at the moment this bare soil is just way too tempting for these little beasts who I love dearly. So pretty much the only tools you need for this job are the pliers, which I have now to cut these. I should have just put my camera on a stand, cutting corners. I couldn't cut the wire, look, and film it. So that's a bit idiotic, but there you go. So you need the pliers to cut the wire on these rolls, and you need, obviously, a spade. Pretty much that's about it. I used a hoe later to spread. I did top dress it, and I used the hoe to spread that, and also to break up the soil and the lumps, rather than a big heavy garden fork. I couldn't be bothered. I've got a sore back still. I'm still struggling with that actually at the moment. It reignited after strangely, it's the funniest things that once you've damaged your back, it's the funniest things that set them off, the most unlikely things. So all this heavy gardening didn't actually set my back off. It was when I was trying to push the Christmas tree out of the door. When I took the decorations down, we had a big bushy one, much bushier than the door was wide, and as I kind of shoved it out, I jarred my back, and that was Christmas, and I still have this sort of niggling pain that's reoccurred. But it's not as bad as it was when I had my car crash, so I can still garden, but it just makes things a little bit, tougher. Then you can use the pliers to cut it to size. So so see, this is so easy. I mean, anyone can do this. You don't even need to use these wooden rolls, by the way. I just use them because I like the kind of psychological barrier that tells me this is a border, especially when they've actually filled out and the edges are overgrown with, you know, your geraniums or flowers, whatever, and the edges are softened, you won't even see them. So it's just good to know that they're there and they're defined. And then I just use this rubber mallet to bash them into the edge of the trench and then bash them down into the soil. So they're pretty sturdy, you know, they're pretty sort of well set in. And of course then I will backfill it with the soil. But when I backfill it, I will make sure I break up the soil and take up as much of the grass and the roots of the grass as I can, while leaving in the soil and any grit that was in there, and obviously the worms. I don't want to throw those out. So there you are, that's it, all bashed in. So it's just now a question of removing the grass, turning over the soil to make it nice for planting. And you can see here I've got to pull off all these tufts of grass here, and that's you know, that I think that probably took me about an hour, to be honest, to do all that. And then break it back up and crumble it back nicely into these gaps. And you can also fill it the other side as well, where it touches the lawn, you know, to make sure it's sort of sturdy both sides. And it's pretty much going to be invisible, the border itself, but it's just, and also make sure it's low enough as well to with the edge of the lawn, because then if you do leave it as lawn and you don't have a gravel path or a brick path or whatever your plans are, you can mow right over it. You're not going to need edging clippers or anything like that. You can just take your mower and you can just fit it right over. So that's it, all done there, all broken down. I have one tuft of grass I've got to deal with. I had a little robin come and have a look over the worms. And then I did decide to top dress it with this bark mulch. I wouldn't normally, but I don't think realistically I'm going to be able to plant this up for another week. Well, partly because I just want to be sure that our last frost really is over. We're not going to get another one. I don't think we are, but you never quite know. And also I'm just really busy, so in all likelihood it won't get planted up till next weekend. I just want to kind of deter any weeds or grass coming through in that time. But be sure that when I do it, I'm going to show you how I do it and what I'm going to plant in it and how I'm going to plan out. I don't know, it might end up being a nursery border at this stage. I'm not quite sure. I might just plant it up with all my nursery plants rather than pot them up all separately and see how they get on here, but I'm not quite sure yet. Ultimately it is going to be an established border for the cottage garden ultimately, but I'm just wondering how I might use it in the short term for the plants that I have that need potting up, but really they need potting up in such numbers. I'm thinking it might just be easier to plant them up here. Anyhow, I mean, that's it. That's how easy it is to, you know, this was lawn. Most of my garden was lawn actually until I moved in, but I find lawn quite tedious. I hate mowing it, and you can't grow anything in it, anything interesting. So this has been my year to combat that. I have already built a rose hedge and various other borders, but really I wanted to, now that my children are older, they ride anyway, they're out, they don't need the garden to run around in. We live in a village with a village green just behind this house. We've got a tennis court and a playground and playing fields. Just don't really need this garden for children, and then they're older now anyway, they're not interested, so I can use it for my own purposes, which is what I've been dying to do ever since I got here, and now I can. So it's going to be converted back into a classic English cottage garden, and I can't wait for it to be done so that I can show you. But in the meantime, I hope you liked this video, I hope you found it helpful, and if you did, please consider subscribing, clicking the notification bell and sharing with your friends. And all that remains is for me to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye.